It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders on his afternoon drive because Alan and everybody listening or watching to this show, day one of OTAs in the books. Alan, how are we feeling?
I'm feeling good. It was a good first day. Learned a lot. I mean, more than usual. And yeah.
Does it feel like a back to school type vibe? Is that what?
Yeah, a little bit. Except like it's very much like catching up with the. I would say it's very much like your first day back at school, and like you see your buddies on the bus, right? It's like, oh, hey Pat, what's up? Good to talk to you. Good to see you. Check in with somebody like Broderick Jones or something like that that I've talked to over the years.
Yeah.
But then, I think differently as a reporter, maybe, we're obsessed with the new kids, right? Like we're not, no one's putting the freshmen in a locker here, right? Like we want to and seek out the new. And so most of the focus for us on a day like this is trying to find those new people, start to build relationships with them, what they're all about, how they tick, that kind of thing. So didn't get to spend a lot of time in the locker room today. Really good to be back at practice. I like that environment. So yeah, that was fun.
Did you see a Landon there? Or
I did, yeah.
But obviously you didn't see E-Rob, but I was curious if you saw a Landon.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I saw Landon in the locker room, and I saw Landon on the field, but E-Rob,
no
he
E-Rob
don't show up
sighting,
until the pads go on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, and you mentioned some of the new guys there. Justin Fields speaking for the first time. Did you get to talk to him at all? Were you part of? Because I know Nick was, so I didn't know if you guys kind of split up.
Nick talked to Justin Fields, and I talked to Russ, and I talked to Mike Tomlin and Donte Jackson. I think Nick talked to the offensive lineman and Roman Wilson and Pat Farmer. So productive.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Donte Jackson. He's somebody that we hadn't heard from yet in any capacity. So let's start there actually before anything else. What was the conversation like with him? What did you learn from him in just day one?
Man, super cool conversation. So he was one of these guys. I feel like we tell the story over and over again, but he was like, yeah, the Steelers were really high on me in the draft process. He talked about how the Steelers and the Panthers used to play in the preseason, that last preseason game while it used to be Steelers Panthers. He was like, Coach Tomlin would always come talk to me before the game. Like, felt like he kept up that relationship the whole time. When he signed his contract extension to stay in Carolina after his rookie deal expired, he said it was down to Pittsburgh and Carolina for him. Those were the two options that he was considering. And, he had a chance to come to Pittsburgh. He found out he was going to be traded a couple weeks before it went down, but he didn't know where. He didn't really have any idea where. And he said right before he had found out there were two options, and it was like Pittsburgh and another. He said like another good team, and said, and I was really happy at that point. And I mentioned this talking to Nick earlier, but like I think it's very easy as a Steelers fan to have like a jaded perception of maybe where the fan base is or where the franchise is compared to its recent levels of expectations. But I mean, I think if you're a guy who's played your entire career with the Carolina Panthers, like, man, that's it's such a different culture. And the thing he was like, it's so exciting to come to a place where like not only is the standard set, but the standard has been set for years and has been upheld over those years by legend after legend after legend. And Troy Polamalu was there watching practice today. He's having an event at the stadium later tonight. And there were all kinds of former players there. And, Brian McFadden was there. And then you're talking about like, to go from those guys to guys like Minka Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt, and now Donte Jackson and Patrick Queen. And he's like, if you're a defensive player and you think you're one of the best, like this is exactly the kind of environment you're looking for. It was just very interesting to hear an NFL player just sort of talk so openly, 7-year vet, about like, yeah, I haven't been in environment that was anywhere near as good as this one. And I think that's useful context for Steelers fans to hear. I think you can separate the results from the process, right? Where I think you can say that, like, hey, maybe the team hasn't won as much as it's expected to, but this is a team that does things the right way, and this is a team that players from around the league want to be a part of. And so
Yeah.
he was very excited to come to Pittsburgh. Justin Fields said very similar things about being traded to Pittsburgh. Obviously, Patrick Queen had a choice about where he was going, but to make the move from a division rival really shows you that he was pretty on board about wanting to be a part of what the Steelers are building.
Yeah. You mentioned the conversation with Nick Farabaugh. You can go check out the Steelers practice report. First edition of that for the 2024 season with OTAs now kicking off. So don't do it yet. Wait until this video's over. And then if you missed anything on here, maybe it was talked about with Alan and Nick over there. But from an on-field perspective with Justin Fields, though, so obviously you didn't get to have a conversation with him, but there's obviously been some video that's come out now of him throwing and stuff. What did you see from him? Does he look every bit as physically impressive as it looks like he did on camera?
Yeah, I mean, he's a physically impressive guy. I think he's someone that when we get to training camp, man, like I think the fans are kind of gonna be like goo goo gaga over, because it's like it's not all perfect, it's not all polished, but there's some wow in there, right? And I think that's the thing that this time of year gets people going. Probably doesn't get coaches going, right? Coaches want, I always say this, right? Or if you have a C student who has never scored above a 70, but always gets a 70. He's like 70% every time. And you have another student that's like 50%, 100, and 50%, 30. Like, the fan base will always be like, give me that guy that's 150%. And the coach will be like, I will never in a million years play that guy over this guy. I don't care if that guy's average turned out to be a 40. If it's 50%, 30, I don't want it. Like, the coach wants dependability and consistency. You can scheme around someone's deficiencies if you know what you're going to get. Wild cards you can't coach with. And so that's part of the reason that people like me, people that are in the fans, have a tendency to fall in love with athletic traits and like, wow, why don't the coaches give this guy a shot? Well, a lot of it's because they can't trust a guy to do what needs to be done. So I think that will be a big part of the process for Justin Fields, is establishing himself as more than just that wow guy occasionally, and more of a consistency guy that he hasn't been in his career. But man, there's a whole lot to build on there, and I think you can see right away, like, look, just the physical stature of putting him next to Russell Wilson, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, these are two very different people. Like, obviously hard to get two different looking NFL quarterbacks right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of goes back to conversation yesterday where we talked about, Russ at his age being a 36-year-old quarterback, as a shorter guy, a guy that relied so much on mobility, why it is such an anomaly for him to continue to succeed if he's going to, because, not saying everybody is Justin Fields, but certainly there are more guys like that physically built than Russell Wilson. Also, no surprise with the pecking order that those guys won in. The offensive line, obviously, spent a first-round pick.
One more thing about the quarterbacks. Both of them talked about whether this is a competition, and I think it was very interesting the way they like the differences in the response. Justin Fields said, like, I'm absolutely competing. I'm not coming here with the intent of sitting the whole year. Like that's not my mindset at all. And I thought Russell Wilson was a little bit more guarded and said, like, look, it's the NFL. Every day is a competition. But, like, let's get real. Russell Wilson hasn't been in a real quarterback competition in, like, 11 and a half years, right? Like, that, like, you can say that the NFL is a competition every day, but, like, you're lying. He has not had a real quarterback competition in a very long time. And so I'll be very interested to see how the dynamic there plays out.
Yeah.
Wilson did say that he and Fields have a long relationship, that they've texted back and forth back since Fields was in college, and he's very excited to play with him and be a mentor for him. I'm interested to see how that plays out, because I do think we are going to get a real quarterback competition, and it's not now. Like there's no
Yeah.
competition to OTAs, but I do expect that to happen.
Good. I mean, I'm hopeful for that being the case. I'm excited to see how that plays out, assuming that it is, a true competition going into training camp, to see how that shakes out. Also, would make the preseason games a lot more interesting than most preseason games typically are. So, very excited to see how that shakes out. But with the offensive line, where I wanted to pivot to next, obviously spent a first round pick on Troy Fautanu last year. Spent a first round pick on Broderick Jones. Already have incumbent Dan Moore Jr. in there. We've kind of tried to take some guesses as to the way that the things would play out. And again, this is only the first day of OTAs. We were trying to go with some speculation based off day one of rookie camp with Troy Fautanu on the right side. But, your observations there and what we are allowed to discuss on here in terms of that, did it surprise you with the way that they started out today?
Yeah, it did. So for Troy Fautanu, still on the right side as he was at rookie camp. Not surprised by that at all. Was surprised to see Broderick Jones working on the right as well, and Dan Moore on the left with that first unit. I did talk to Mike Tomlin about this, and his answer was basically, it's early and don't make too much of it. That's just kind of where we put them. And on a lot of levels, I agree with that. It is early and it doesn't really matter. And the reason that he said, the way he said it really put something in my head, and that the Steelers feel like they can't play Dan Moore at right tackle.
Yeah.
And it has been a problem, not a big problem. And Tomlin actually pushed back that it was a problem, but he's wrong. It's been a problem that they can't play Dan Moore at right tackle. It would have made things a lot easier last year.
I agree.
If they could have played Dan Moore at right tackle. It would make things a lot easier right now if they felt like they could play Dan Moore at right tackle. And so I wonder how much they are just trying to make sure that both of these guys get exposed to both positions at a young enough age that they don't get back to that place again. That, like Dan Moore had to play as a fourth round rookie. They didn't want to put too much on his plate. They, their idea from day one was, hey, we're going to move Chooks to the right side, even though maybe that's not where he projects to be best, because this is what's going to make Dan Moore the most comfortable. And he's, probably as a fourth round rookie, the weak link in this offensive line. So we need to make it as comfortable for him as possible. But because of that, he never was exposed to doing anything else. I wonder if the Steelers are really trying to focus on getting both of these guys ready to be able to do either. The expectations are a little higher when you're a first round pick. Maybe they do think that either of these guys could be capable of playing in either spot, and they want a little bit of Broderick on the left and a little bit of Broderick on the right. Obviously, Fautanu has been playing the left in college. Now they want him on the right. And use this time for that type of training, and then kind of let training camp settle out. Okay, which of these guys are the best? It certainly seems like in Mike Tomlin's eyes, there's still an open question as to who the best two tackles are right now. That's not unexpected. But I think he's trying to put himself into a position where at the end of the day, no matter which he decides are the best two tackles, he has a way forward in terms of guys with experience and playing time in the spots necessary to make that happen.
And you're like, can Dan Moore Jr. be the number 3 tackle only playing one side? Because, okay, say Troy Fautanu gets hurt, then you're asking Broderick to switch back to right because Dan Moore can't move to right. Like,
he can if the other two guys are capable of both playing right tackle, right? Like I think this is part of the finding out there, right? Like he can be if the other two guys can both play on the right side. We've seen Broderick play on the right side. We know he can do it. Now we're getting a look at Troy Fautanu on the right side. And so if that experiment proves, worthwhile, then it wouldn't surprise me if it continues. But I do think part of this is trying to discover what they have in these young guys, just to see where they might work best and not really pigeonhole themselves into making a decision about where they're going to play right now. I think the flip side, the downside there is, Broderick is not a player with a lot of experience, and I think
Yeah.
if he is going to be the starting left tackle this year, I expect there to be some growing pains in that process, and I think you're exacerbating those growing pains by him starting on the right side right now. Like if the idea is for Broderick Jones to play left tackle in week 1, then you're not doing the most you can to prepare for that by him playing on the right side right now. So I think you can choose what you want to do. You can optimize yourself for one outcome, or you can leave yourself as open as possible to be able to deal with a number of outcomes as they come. It seems like the Steelers are choosing B instead of A. It's hard to say that's wrong at this juncture, but look, if they decide they want to go with Broderick Jones and they struggles to open the season, certainly going to open themselves up for some critique of that process.
So in the short term, it's fine for him to be the top backup, being just the left tackle, Dan Moore. But if that is the case, I don't want to say longer term, but just past the season, because he's going to be a free agent. Is there enough value in him just being a backup on the left side for him to warrant them wanting him back as the number 3 tackle? Like if there's even interest from both sides,
in my mind, there is no chance of Dan Moore being here beyond
Okay.
the 2024 season. He is going to get a contract that is going to be significant, and someone's going to pay him to be a starting tackle.
Okay. What about the other? You can almost look at Broderick, assuming that he is going to be the left tackle, as like another rookie year for him on the left side as opposed to being on the right side. So, you could talk about, you got 2 basically rookie bookends there, and then what about in the middle with Zach Frazier? What did you see from him today?
It's first day OTAs, so Mike Tomlin was asked about it, and he was like, I didn't see anything. I saw one bad snap. It's early. It's nothing that I would be concerned about, but I think that they're going to put him into a battle with Nate Herbig, and he's going to have to earn it. They're not just going to give him a starting job. I've been pretty steadfast that I think Zach Frazier's going to start, and I think of the Steelers rookies, he is the most likely to have early contributions with this team being a week 1 starter. But they're not just going to hand it to him. He's going to have to earn it and go through that process.
Absolutely. Sure. Okay, and what about, I know that a lot of people are going to be curious about Roman Wilson, a player that Steelers definitely need as a rookie to step up and be a big part of this passing game. We've talked a lot about him, obviously being an immediate contributor in the slot. Is there more to tap into beyond that in year 1, in your opinion?
It seems like it. We might have to call him Roamin Wilson. He was moving around a lot. I don't think that they're going to lock him into a spot on the field. I do think that he's going to be limited to places where he can get freer releases. They're not going to put him in that outside X spot, but it seems like they're taking a look at him doing more than one thing. Now, again, rookie, first day OTAs, not like he was playing a big role out there today, but I think he looks like a player that they're going to want more than just the slot out of. I could see that becoming like a number 2 receiver thing, but like if I were making a depth chart today, I think I'd have Van Jefferson pretty comfortably ahead of him.
Okay. All right. That's going to be one to watch, in my opinion, just because, like I said, a rookie wide receiver that the Steelers, you look at their depth chart, certainly need immediate contributions from. So curious to see how that's going to shake out. Go ahead.
Mike Tomlin was asked about the depth of wide receiver, and he basically said, "Look, we're open to making additions," and kind of gives the usual caveats of like we are at every position. I'm like, yeah, well, you're lying. Like, if some random mediocre starting quarterback comes available, you're not going to add him just because he's 4% better than Kyle Allen. Like, you make additions where your team has needs. If they make an addition at wide receiver, it'll be an acknowledgement that the group of players there is not good enough. And, I think it's pretty clear that it's not. And so I don't think the story is done here in terms of what this wide receiver room is going to look like for the start of the season.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with that. And, we can kind of we've talked about Pat Freiermuth basically being the number two option in the passing game. And Alan, I don't think we've really touched on the fact that, like, obviously so much has been made about Cam Hayward not being at OTAs because, he was the one that came out and said it. And a lot of people have taken issue with it. You were just talking about it today really being a non-story. But we haven't touched on the guys that are in a contract year that are there. Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris is there after getting his fifth-year option decline. James Daniels, like there's a group of guys searching for a contract extension this summer that are participating in OTAs.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm not quite sure what that says, right? I mean, on one hand, all of those guys that were holding out, or whatever you want to call it, holding in, or whatever, were doing so while they were in active negotiations with the team, and all of them eventually signed a contract. Not since Le'Veon Bell has a Steelers player not been participated in something and not eventually signed a deal. And they were clearly still negotiating with Bell throughout that process. They just never reached a deal with him. On the other hand, there's been a lot of guys who have entered the last year of their contract where it was pretty clear that the team was not interested in talking contract before the year. You remember, like, Levi Wallace was kind of notably like the one Steelers starter last year who was entering on an expiring contract. And Omar said maybe about this time last year, like, yeah, we're not talking to anybody about contract extensions after. Oh, I guess they did Highsmith's deal, right? And then it was like, yeah,
Right.
we're not talking to anybody else. It was like very clear, like, yes, under no circumstances are we considering signing Levi Wallace to a contract extension. And so Levi was there. Like, I think there is something to guys not participating when they're working on a deal. And look, Highsmith participated throughout, so clearly not everybody has that
Yeah.
mindset. But I wonder if Najee Harris being in Pittsburgh today does signify that there really isn't a lot of traction between him and the team on a contract extension. If they have just kind of said, hey, maybe we'll work on this after the season if there's a deal to be done. Because, gosh, I mean, Cam's an older guy. He's coming off an injury. Certainly, he's right to have concerns about, working out while negotiating a deal and the potential for a small injury to have an outsized impact on those proceedings. But I mean, a running back is at the top of the list in terms of guys
Sure.
that would want to be careful about doing that kind of thing. I was honestly, Najee Harris is a little bit late. I guess he had, I don't know, I didn't get a reason. Didn't matter. But like I was thinking, like, oh, maybe he's not going to come. Like it didn't. It would not have surprised me to not see Najee Harris not only today but throughout OTAs. And so when he was there, maybe not working on a deal at all. I don't know. That's kind of where my mind went to with that. Maybe the same thing you could say about Freiermuth and Daniels, or maybe not. I don't know. I think obviously offensive line, a little bit different animal in terms of the body compared to a running back. You're not actually getting into a lot of contact in OTAs, but I don't know. Very interesting that those three guys are at OTAs and Cam Hayward isn't, in the sort of dichotomy of approaches there.
We've heard a lot about, this offseason, actually just within the recent days, about Najee Harris being in the best shape of his life. And I feel like on the video that I saw today of him, he did look a bit slimmer. Did you feel that way?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. If it was, it didn't look like super noticeable to me. I can't say I spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Well,
So George
sure.
Pickens maybe looked like he muscled up a little bit. I don't know if he gained weight,
Yeah.
but like he looked a little physically stronger in his upper half to me. Trying to think of any other characterizations I could make like that. Joey Porter Jr. is a guy that I think has really done nice work. It's not like it was overnight, but I think if you compare him to this time last year, you're looking at a pretty different physical specimen. He put on some real work, not just this offseason, but even during last season. You can kind of tell He's a bulked up dude. It was fun talking to Donte Jackson about him and the way those two have really hit it off in or texting one another about things and going back and forth about the defense, and fun to watch that chemistry develop. Donte Jackson was a really good interview. It's gonna be a good group of DBs to talk to this year. There's not a bad interview in that group. I'm pretty fired up about that.
There you go. I am interested because it kind of got my mind going when you were talking about, how a lot of guys when they're looking for a new contract won't participate in OTAs while they're going through that process. Have there been circumstances though that you can think of where a player maybe like came to OTAs not like negotiating at that point, then OTAs started, they started negotiating, and then they kind of shut it down until the process was done and they got something finished?
I mean, there's players that go at OTAs every year. They're optional. Guys, I don't want to say take advantage of it, but guys certainly will pick and choose when they want to be there. I remember there was one year they had a pretty veteran team, and they actually had fewer sessions just because they were like, we would rather have more of the guys here at the same time than, we'd rather have 6 or 7 practices with all the guys here than 10 practices with 50% of them there at each of them. So it's not that uncommon for guys to come and go. I don't know that I've specifically seen anyone do what you're talking about.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Were there any other takeaways that maybe we didn't talk about on here that stuck out to you for whatever reason?
Let's see. Landon Roberts talked about how they did get the schedule that he was talking about when he was on the show about how Atlanta and Los Angeles come very early in the season with a lot of changes. And we talked a little bit about what he thinks especially with that Chargers coaching staff with Jim Harbaugh coming from college, really hard to predict what they're going to look like. Although, the Steelers have some familiarity with Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, but how much is he going to do things with Justin Herbert like he did with Lamar Jackson? Pretty different tools for him to work with there. So that's where his head is right now. He's already looking forward to the season. And Cole Holcomb there, walking around, not practicing yet, but looked pretty close, I would say, to being able to participate. And then Corey Trice and Trenton Thompson both on the field as well. Trent Thompson said that was his first day of full go. He had that neck injury, remember?
Yeah.
Kind of suffered in that Colts game that then maybe kind of turned into a bigger deal than initially thought. Ended up missing the rest of the season because of it. I said today was his first full go day. He was out there, and then Corey Trice back from that ACL out there. He was working. We saw a video of him working earlier in the offseason, so I was expecting him to be out there, but a participant as well. So on the injury front, seems like team's pretty close to healthy.
Nothing said though regarding Cole Holcomb, right? That's just an observation.
Yeah, Mike said that he's been working really hard and he's close or something. Something not too far away. I think maybe was his exact words. I would say mini camp might be reasonable. Just trying to guess based on the way he looked, but not looking like a guy who's not going to be ready for the start of the season. Let's say that.
Sure. The Thompson thing is crazy to me. Like we're talking 5 months ago, over 5 months ago, that injury happened, and like it was originally just thought it was a stinger. And for him to miss that much time, and that's crazy.
It was not just a stinger. It was a pretty extensive neck injury there that he ended up not choosing to have surgery. It was on the table, but did not, and has got it rehabbed and said he's ready to go.
Great. Well, hope the best for him. Anything else?
And I think that's it. I want to save some. We got 9 more of these, so we don't want to run the river dry on day one. But I think we touched on the major topics. Hey, leave a comment if there's something you want to know. We have lots of days to talk about this team, so we can get into the weeds, man. If you want to talk about the minutia of OTAs, this is really the time. So hit us up. I can't, there are rules about what I can report and what I can't, but I will try, especially if you give me a comment and I can plan ahead. I can get the answers and make sure that I can get them. So leave those comments, keep them coming. And we'll try to get another friend from the locker room on here. Been working on it. We'll see what we can get done.
There we go. Alan, until tomorrow, tell the people they can find you.
Saunders _ PGH Steelers Now. Make sure you go to SteelersNow.com. Check out all the content for myself and Nick. Derek Bell has a story about Justin Fields that I promise you are going to want to read. Go read it right now.
There you go. Oh, also got to give a huge shout out to Derek Bell, who, with friend of the show, Pat Farmuth, did a film breakdown with Pat on his channel, breaking down his own film. It was awesome. 30 minutes plus of just them two watching ball together, which is great. So be sure to check that out as well. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments, like Alan said, with questions or things that you just want to know about what's going on at OTAs, and he will try to get the scoop for you to talk about on here. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find Steelers Afternoon Drive there, and you can find me, Zachary Smith, PGH, on all social media. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.